Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. I truly believe that sometimes a single insight can completely change your business directions and allow you to achieve your business goals. In this episode, I interview Alain Hunkins. Alain is a CEO at Hunkins Leadership Group. He's a Forbes contributor, he's a keynote speaker, and he's also author of Cracking the Leadership Code. If you're in any leadership position, don't miss this episode. We had a discussion on the impact of a pandemic on our leadership teams and what has changed over the last 2 years. As a business are starting to open, we also talk about the challenges ahead for leadership teams and also how to overcome some of those challenges. I think you will really enjoy our discussion when Alain shares his perspective on our leadership teams from his book and how empathy, communication, and technology impacts the leadership teams. You know, there's been so much written on a leadership teams over the years, but I've never seen such a practical approach to deal with the leadership challenges, and also a unique perspective. You know, how to even look at leadership, roles in a company. If you like this content, don't forget to send us your feedback and like and subscribe to this channel for future videos. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Alain Hunkins. Alain is Alain, you've been working on a leadership for a long time. You know, you are strategy contributor to Forbes. You're a TED speaker, and the recent book, Cracking the Leadership Code. I just finished the book a couple of days ago, and one thing I was so impressed with, Alain, that the amount of research that you stated and that how much work you put into this book. Very impressive. I'm looking forward to learning from you in this podcast. I'm looking forward to going on a journey with you on a leadership. Thank you so much for your time today, and welcome to podcast.
Thanks so much, Gurmeet. My pleasure. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Good stuff. So where do you see what we just finished pandemic, Alain? Where do you see that what's been challenged? I know is leadership was challenged during this pandemic. Where you see where we're sitting in leadership wise during this pandemic?
Yeah, well, we are sitting in some very interesting times, Gurmeet. If you think about it, what this pandemic did, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. A friend of mine who works in the field with me, similar, right? So in terms of change leadership and helping people, said, this was early on. He said, I am jealous of the coronavirus. And I said, what are you talking about? You're jealous of the coronavirus. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
He said the coronavirus has gotten people and organizations to change more quickly than, in a month, in 2 months, more changes have happened than have happened in 20 years in terms of the psychology of culture and organizations. And so I think it's been really interesting times, particularly what I think is, the fact is here we all faced this literally life-threatening health crisis, and, and what that did is, and it also forced everyone to, if they could work from home, et cetera, it forced a reckoning of values. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to who say, you know what? I don't know if I want to go back to the office. I didn't realize how much joy it would bring me to be able to see my kids at the dinner table every night. And I don't know if I want to go back to that. Obviously you've heard about this idea of the Great Resignation, how more people are leaving their jobs than ever before. Yeah. It's because I think people are no longer willing to put up with the lousy leadership that they just took for granted. And we've been on this journey where people's threshold for mediocre leadership has gotten less and less as we continue on. And this has pushed things forward even more so. And what really in today's world, if you look at, about 67% of our workforce today is millennials, Gen Y, and Gen Z, as you'd say in Canada, Gen Z. Yeah. And they really expect a different type of value proposition from their leaders, right? They want people who can make the complex more simple and people who are authentic and can connect with empathy, right? And communicate with clarity and create creative collaboration. And they're not really willing to put up with what I call the 20th century or dinosaur style of command and control. Do this because I say so, otherwise you're out of a job. Because they have, these are all digital natives who have grown up with LinkedIn, with Glassdoor, and they're going, you know what? I can get another job. I can work somewhere where people are going to treat me with a fundamental baseline of respect. And if you can't do that, I'll quit. I'll move back in with my parents in the basement, whatever it takes. Doesn't matter. I am not willing to tolerate this kind of lousy leadership. And therefore, we have seen this real shift forward. And I think many leaders are struggling with, how do I lead in this generation? They want me to be real, but what does that mean? Does that mean I get to be their friend? Can I be their friend? Is that okay? How does this work? And I think the people who understand some of the fundamental basics of human psychology, which is all of us want to be seen, all of us want to be heard, all of us want to be recognized and valued, esteemed, treated with respect. Those people were probably pretty good at this before the pandemic. But many people end up in leadership roles who don't have those fundamental basic human psychological skills. What they were is they were a good accountant or a good salesperson or a good whatever. And they're like, you're so good, Gurmeet, we're going to promote you. You're not going to lead a team of this. And what makes you a good individual contributor has nothing to do with your leadership skills. And so people have to make this momentous leap from where they were to where they need to be. And I think that's where we are culturally. And I think it's an exciting time because things are shifting. Things are definitely shifting.
Yeah, no, the point you make, the younger generation coming to workforce, I happen to hire a lot of younger people, and the new ones coming out of schools or all those social issues happen during this pandemic, or they almost demand and they want to see where you stand on those issues. They're looking for that. Hey, where do you stand for this? So where do you stand on this, right? So they're almost looking for your value system, and they're almost challenging that. Hey, they want to know before they even started. I was surprised. I posted a position. We interviewed about 116, 117 people. Half of them they ask, is that position remote or is it in office? And they would not go for interview if it was just an in office position. So they almost demanding those what you just talk about it, does that also put leadership on a little bit on a different side? A lot of those social issues, leaders we never took a stand on. We were always trying to accommodate everybody. Now we have to take a little bit of stand. Does that challenge a little bit on a leadership side? They have to pick a little bit more skill set and fine tune their communication a little better.
Yeah, and it's very much so. Very much leaders have to increase their ability to talk about the issues that they thought. See, what's happening is with this younger generation in the workforce is they don't see there being this, you get to work and you park your personality at the door. Like they don't see this separation between work and life. They see it as an integration. And they, much in the same way as that they want to work for a company they believe in, they also buy as customers from brands they believe in, and they don't buy from other brands. And so your position in terms of social justice, in terms of activism, means something to people, as well as what are your work-life balance criteria. You brought up this idea of people are asking, is this position a completely remote or is it work from home? I was just talking with a colleague that I coach, and she just left a position as a marketing manager for a company where they said, look, you're mandated, you have to come back into the office 3 days a week. And she's based in the Midwestern United States. She just quit her job and got a new job, similar position for a company that's based in Belgium, where it's 100% remote, right? Similar work. And it's interesting because I've talked to many leaders who are concerned. They're like, well, we need to have people back in the office a few days a week because that's where all of the synergy happens, right? It's those creative brainstorms by the water cooler. And if we don't have that, we're missing out on that stuff. You know what? There is zero data that says that people are more creative and brainstorming in person than online. There's zero data. So what you're seeing is you have a lot of leaders. I think they would be much better off saying, you know what? Honestly, team, I want you back in the office because I have high control needs. I mean, because that's what it is, right?
That's what it is.
It's like I have high control needs, and I personally feel better if you're nearby, and that's the reason that we're doing this. Because that's fair. If that's and I'm the owner of this company, or I run this company, then say that, but don't mask it and couch it in some stuff that's just not true. Don't tell me why it should be, as opposed to saying, I have high control needs, and I feel way better having you around. And to which I would answer is like, oh, I guess you're not comfortable with really empowering your people, right? In which case you can have to sit in that difficult question. But it's an interesting time.
I was speaking to one of the CEO couple days ago, and one thing, I think a lot of business leaders agree that they're not bringing people back because of productivity. Productivity has gotten higher when people are working from home, right? People
Yes.
working the time whenever they want to work. So it's not the reason productivity is just a different reason. What you just mentioned, that they're just not comfortable leaving that control. So yeah, it's not because of productivity that you could produce more if you're just sitting on a chair in office.
Yeah, what you're seeing, I think, is a fact is that we have a hard time letting go of the past, even though, like you just said, is that people are more productive working at home, and yet it's so ingrained in us. Like if we see people, like what are they doing with their time, and this kind of industrial age belief that we're paying people for their time, right? As opposed to we're paying people for the value that they bring in the time they work. And as a leader, do you care if someone creates the output you want in 8 hours or 4 hours? Why does that matter to you? Why are you so concerned? What is this about? And I think a lot of it has to do with, I do this because that's the way I was treated, right?
Yeah.
It's the holdover is that we're basically copycats, and we copy the behavior of the previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for us to stop as leaders to be a little bit more evolved and say, you know what? Because I did it this way and because I had to suffer through this, you need to suffer through that. That's a really lousy way to run a business. It's actually a really lousy way to lead in general. I mean, how many of us would say, you look at so many of the progresses that we've made around human rights on this planet in the last 300 years. How many of us would say, well, back in those days, that was good enough for them. I mean, there's a reason that slavery has been banned in so many countries because it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so why are you continuing to perpetuate old models if they're not particularly useful?
Yeah. On that note, you're absolutely right on that, Alain, that, I had a discussion with one business leaders who were similar field as I am.
Yeah.
Many years ago, the way we measure productivity was based on a time clock, right? Somebody clocks in 8 in the morning and they clock at 5 in the evening. We thought it was, they were being productive because they always been on time.
Yeah.
If we're going to measure productivity different way, we're based on have they completed the work or have they performed well or all those they've been part of the team. If we're going to measure all those things, we may have to set up our companies differently a little bit, because now we're measuring at different things, not just only a time clock, right? So the challenge of measuring that, setting up the company and systems differently so we can measure different items, that may trigger a little bit change in the companies. A lot of companies probably not there yet, so they can set it up differently, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what you're saying gets to something I oftentimes coach people around, is that lousy leadership is lazy leadership, right? Think about that. Because the onus is on the business owner or the executive leadership, whoever that might be, to go, let's think about this culture. Like you're saying, what are we measuring? How is that serving us? How is that not serving us? If we need to change, how do I, as the leader, need to change? And look, it's so much easier when you're in a position of power and control, instead of holding the mirror up to yourself and saying, gosh, I've got to do some changes around here. It's so much easier to say, you need to change. Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of you and get somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so we really, I think leaders need to be courageous and take a look in the mirror and go, how are our systems serving us? How are they not serving us? And what am I going to do to change them so that they ultimately serve the greater good all around? And that takes some work. And if you're in a position of entitlement, of power, you think, I don't really want to do all that work. I'm going to push it down onto my people and make them do the work.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that is hard work. I think that's where a lot of leaders, but we had 2 years of, if somebody wanted to put a hard work in, they could have changed all that, what we needed to change.
Yes.
Very interesting. So let's talk about your book. I've seen a lot of leadership books, but what I was very impressed with the amount of work you put into that. I want to research you, and very interesting. One of the items you talk about in the book, Alain, was empathy was one of the items that's so critical. So if you walk us, our listeners, through why empathy is so important for leaderships, to start from there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just back up for a second. So my definition of leadership has nothing to do. I whack my microphone in a fit of passion. Sorry about that. My definition of leadership has nothing to do with position or title, right? It's to think about, at its core, what is leadership? Leadership is a relationship between someone who has a vision, who would like to bring someone along to get something done, and someone who chooses to follow. So if leadership is in fact a relationship, it's between two human beings. And at the core, like, we're mammals. And what mammals need is we need to feel connected. You might remember in your ancient Greek and Roman history, the worst thing that could happen, you'd be exiled from your community. Right? So the sense of belonging is so important. And when people feel like they can't actually be themselves at work, that they have to sort of check a part of themselves or their feelings at the door, their ability to actually stay present and stay connected goes down. Now, you might be thinking, oh, being present, who needs that? I didn't hire these people for that. I hired them for a job. Well, in my research, what I found is the number one thing that influences employee engagement and employee productivity and retention has to do with, do you feel cared for by your immediate supervisor, right? Which is empathy, right? Empathy's definition is showing people that you understand them and care how they feel. Now, for all you listeners, you're hearing that and you're going, thank you, Alain, but tell me something I don't know. I mean, it's pretty self-intuitive. It's pretty obvious, right? Now, here's the thing. You might think you're being empathetic, but you may not be as empathetic as it seems. So some of the research, and I share this in the book as well, is that HR Magazine in the UK did the study. They studied about 4,000 people. And what they found was that while 92% of CEOs say that their organizations are empathetic, only 50% of the employees in those very same organizations say that their CEOs are empathetic. So there's this gap between what we oftentimes intend and how we're being perceived. And in my research, what I found was there are about 5 or 6 different core reasons why empathy is easier said than done. And I'll just share a couple with you and with the audience right now. So one of the big reasons, if you think about it, if empathy is showing people that you understand them and that you care how they feel, that takes time, right? I have to actually slow down and listen to you and let go of my agenda. And the fact is, look, we live in this digital age where information travels at the speed of light. But human relationships don't move that fast. Human relationships take time. And so a lot of our organizations, and I'm sure you've seen this in your work, where people have, bias for action, drive for results as a listed core leadership competency. Now, I have no problem with results. I definitely am a results-oriented person. However, your drive to achieve results should not come at the expense of driving over the people that are in fact trying to deliver those results for you. Because this goes back to this sense of, as leaders, it isn't about us getting the work done. It's about leading the team of people who get the work done. And guess what? If they thrive and get their results, we thrive and our results are created. So the first big challenge to leading with empathy is you've got to have the wisdom to know, yes, there's a time and a place to go fast, and there's a time and a place to go slow. And you have to be able to differentiate between those two. The other big thing around empathy, besides speed, has to do with the fact that again, if empathy is defined as showing people you understand them and care how they feel, caring how people feel, that's getting into the whole realm of human emotions. And if I went to school to be, accountant, and I'm now the CFO and then the CEO, I may be very uncomfortable with the messiness of human emotions. I mean, I think part of why we love numbers in the business world is because numbers are very neat. Every day, the number 8 shows up at work, and it's always 1 more than 7. It's always 1 less than 9. We never have to worry about how it's going to show up. Did it have a bad weekend? Did it have a fight with its significant other? We don't have to worry about that with numbers. With people, they're messy, right? And in fact, I remember I was coaching a guy who was telling me, I never ask my people how they feel. I just don't do it. You know why? Because if I ask them, they might tell me, and I don't think I want that much information. Right? Again, it's that old school mindset that you can somehow separate the person from the employee. And look, the person is the employee. I'm not saying you need to be a licensed psychologist. What I'm suggesting is that you need to be an empathetic human being that notices people and says things like, hey, Gurmeet, how are you feeling today? And you're willing to listen to something beyond, I'm fine, how are you? I'm good, how are you? Right? It's actually being willing, because when people, and Amy Edmondson at Harvard has done tons of research around this idea of psychological safety, which is that when people feel listened to, they start to feel more psychologically safe and they perform better. So it is in your best interest to be an empathetic leader.
Wow, that is very interesting. The speed you talk about, that's a tricky one. We gotta move businesses forward. I'm sure business leaders have a lot of things in mind. You gotta tackle a lot of things. You gotta make sure you're profitable. There's so many things to handle, and I find challenges sometimes because what needs to be done. If somebody just follow you, they can get it done, but you can't. It's tempting to go that way, but definitely you want to slow down and let the person drive it, whatever. It may not be 100% to your style, what you're trying to do, but let them at least drive and learn from it and go. But that's a tricky one. I think that takes a lot of practice, as you mentioned, that it takes time to get better at that. But empathy, back to that, gotta be very critical during this pandemic, Alain. Is everybody's at home going through so many different challenges, health challenges, or family member could be not feeling well. There's so many different challenges people felt when they were going through this pandemic, and business leaders themselves feeling some of those challenges at their homes as well, right?
Sure.
So listening to staff on their health issues or whatever the issues they're going through, that gotta be very critical during this pandemic.
Absolutely. I mean, that's again where this pandemic has opened up the conversations around these things, where suddenly, if we're all seeing each other on Zoom screens, we're literally beaming into each other's homes and seeing, is there a kid running by or crying in the background, or a pet, or all these different, the fact is life is messy, and we were, before the pandemic, many of us tried to live this two-dimensional cookie cutter, like, you just come to work and we don't think about that stuff, out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. Well, it can no longer be out of mind. And so I think what leaders need to do is, are you willing to have these challenging conversations? Because people are struggling. Like you're saying, people have struggled, whether it's, whether it's health issues, whether it's the fact that you don't have a dedicated space in your house to have a home office set up because you live in a small space with a whole lot of other people. Or do you live by yourself and you're starting to feel social isolation? I mean, the rise of mental health challenges has been astronomical over these years. I mean, if you look at mental health professionals, there's such a lack of caregivers who can, there's waiting lists for therapists now. I mean, it's crazy because so many people are struggling with the mental health challenges that we're all feeling. I know I've certainly felt some of them at times. I mean, just the fact that I can't go out, do anything, see anybody, that gets, like we say, it's Groundhog Day over and over again, like that movie, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of that's going on.
Yeah, we have different challenges in Canada with the mental health challenges because a lot of our workforce in that field are senior. They're exiting workforce, so there's not enough people to replace them. So we have a totally different challenges. But here this is one of that. I think as we go back to offices or trying to go back open businesses, we're gonna see a lot of that people struggling with those challenges. Interesting. Sure. So let's talk about communication. The second item, very important. You mentioned that in the book, that communication is something that very critical. All of these are the soft skills, and looks like the leadership is all about soft skills. Going forward, it used to be a lot of hard skills, but I think everything comes down to a lot of soft skills, right? Communication is one of those items that you mentioned in your book.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, and I think calling these things the hard skills and the soft skills is probably some of the worst marketing that was ever done in the history of words. Because, we're calling them soft skills, but they're actually quite hard. That is challenging in that way. And I see why we're seeing the more and more importance on things like connection, communication, and collaboration is because in this digital age that we have, everyone's got access to information. So the old paradigm of the leader being the one who was the keeper of all the information and would spoon feed it out to the masses. Here's this important thing, go do this, doesn't exist anymore. So everyone's got information, and what leaders need to do is facilitate that information and move it from where it is, and then help convert the information into insight for people to take action. And so communication is key in this way, because what I've found in my work, in my research, and certainly all the different companies I've worked with is that, in our heads, we think we're being clear. We think that it's obvious because it's very clear to me. However, misunderstanding is the natural default setting for human communication. So as leaders, we should actually go into situations assuming misunderstanding, and then we have to work proactively to make sure that we correct that. And I go through, dozens of different tools and tips and techniques around things you can do to ensure that you get common understanding. And the reason that creating shared understanding is so critical, and why it's in fact not a soft skill, but I call them performance skill, is because creating shared understanding, this is your platform on which you are going to build all future actions. So you want to create a platform that is solid based on mutual and shared understanding, because then you make good decisions, right? It's like if I have great information, I have good understanding, I make good decisions, and then I create great results. If my understanding is poor, we're going to make lousy decisions. We're going to end up with lousy results. I'll just give you a very quick and simple example from this. So let's say, for example, is that I am having a meeting with my team, and I share information about, we have a new product. And somehow they all walk out of the meeting, and I talk about the specifications of what this product can do. And I've got 3 people in the meeting with me, and all 3 are coming away saying, oh, this can serve up to 200 people. And the next person says, this can serve up to 500, whatever. It's not clear. And they've all come to their own conclusion. And let's say they're all salespeople, and now they're all going to sell this to different people. So they close the sales, we come back, and guess what? The specifications of the product don't do what they've just promised to their people, right? So we've made poor decisions. I mean, that's just a simple example. I mean, it happens all over the place. And so I'm going to share a simple tool that I teach a lot, and I call it asking for a receipt. Now, if you think about what are receipts, like receipts are proof or confirmation of a complete transaction, right? You buy something, you get a receipt. It's proof of the completed transaction. Now, in general, the more important the transaction, the more you're going to make sure that you get a receipt. So, for example, if you go to your local, Tim Hortons and get a cup of coffee, you say, do you need a receipt? No, I'm okay, right? Because maybe it's $1 or $1.50 or whatever that is. However, I can guarantee you the next time you buy a house or a car, you're going to get a receipt, right? There's no way you're walking out of there without proof of that transaction. So in communication, asking for a receipt is an analogy for making sure that you have confirmation that the information that was shared is the same information as what was understood. And there's a great example of this that comes from the fast food industry. So I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I certainly do. But early in the 1980s is when all the fast food restaurants started putting in their drive-throughs, right? You could drive up and order your food and then pick it up and drive out right from your car. Well, when they first introduced the drive-through systems, the process was a nightmare. It was very, very common that people would show up and they'd order at the intercom, and then they'd pick up their food at the window, and the order would be all wrong. And this was consistent. This went on for years. And finally, someone figured out a solution. Now, you might be thinking, what was the new technology? It was actually really, really simple. What they did was they taught the employees that after, let's say you went up, let's say it's McDonald's, it's easy, right? And you go up and say, I'd like 2 cheeseburgers, I'd like 2 French fries, and 2 Coca-Colas. What they taught the employees to do was to start repeating the order back. Oh, you want 2 cheeseburgers, 2 fries, 2 Coca-Colas? Yes. Or if I said 3, no, I said 2. Okay, 2, great. So they confirm, they get a receipt of understanding, and then you drive to the window, and guess what? You get your answer, and it is correct, and people are happy on both sides. Now, look, the way I say it is, if a fast food place will do this for a $1.50 hamburger, don't you think that the decisions and the actions you take in your business are worth the same level of clarity? So what I suggest is, usually, let's say we have an hour-long meeting. About 50 minutes in, when 10 minutes left, wind up the meeting and then shift into asking for a receipt. Go around the table or the Zoom room and say, great, just to confirm, what is everyone's understanding of the next step actions of what we're walking away with? So often people know that, oh, we should do that. That'd be a good thing to do. But we assume we're professionals. We all know. We don't all know. If we all knew, we wouldn't make mistakes. Here's some scary data. So another study I found was that an average of 40% of people say that they spend up to 45 minutes per day trying to clarify confusing or unclear instructions. 45 minutes per day, just trying to figure out, what the heck am I supposed to do? So we assume, of course, I'm being clear. The challenge is you're not. So that's my kind of 2 cents on communication and why it is so, in fact, so very important.
Yeah, that is very important. I see that in a sales the same way. I'm in meetings all the time. Start a meeting with the agenda and the finish with a recap. Without that, you're just losing a lot of people. Without a next step.
Yeah.
Very, very important. Very interesting. So where does leadership stand on some of those issues? I think communication was one of the things you mentioned. Where does technology fit into this, Alain? There's so many messages comes through, whether it's email, calendar, we're running meeting after meeting on a Zooms, and there's so many, there's so many collaboration tools out there. There's so much distractions. Where does the focus? How do leadership gains that focus? The focus they need to stay on a topic, not just go around, because there's so many messaging, so many communication pieces coming towards you. How do you stay focused on some of those items?
No, I love this question, Gurmeet. I love this question. So when it comes to technology, here's my rule of thumb, and I must say this at least 3 times a week to somebody. When it comes to technology, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right? What I mean by that is that we have all this amazing technology, but it becomes this fire hose, right? Where we can be literally drowning in a tidal wave of information. Again, there's a big difference between information and insight. So I'll give you a couple of examples of places where I think as leaders, we have to get conscious and intentional about minimizing the impact on people. So number one, this is a simple one. I mean, this has to do with email. So the two-headed hydra, like the two-headed monster that people are dealing with usually are emails and meetings. Those are the two big time sucks, right? They say that something between 55 and 65% of people's days are spent just processing through their email inbox and being in meetings, which leaves you maybe 35% of your day to what we call get work done, right? Because we're just all that stuff. So I'm sure you've seen this, maybe you've done this, but many companies have this culture whereas we CC everybody on everything. And why do we do that? Because the fear is if we don't and something important comes in, then we won't have a paper trail. We won't. However, if you think about how often does something like that come up versus all the time you have to go, oh, this is in my inbox. This has absolutely nothing to do with me. I didn't need to see this. Like, can you have enough trust in people that they don't CC everyone on everything? As one of my colleagues said, they should change the CC line on the email functionality on all the various templates. They should change it instead of CC : it should go CYA : right? Cover your ass, right? Because that's what it feels like it is, for a lot of people. It's like, that's what we're doing. So that's just a simple example of what are you doing? Another thing is to consider meetings and your meeting hygiene. Does everyone, because you can look at people's calendars and invite people to meetings, does everyone need to be in all the meetings that they need to be in? Probably not. And are you okay with that? I mean, we could spend just an hour just talking about meeting hygiene, if not more, because I have this vendetta against poorly run meetings, but realizing that there are so many things that you can do so that you can eliminate wastes of time. Another thing, for example, is are you scheduling all of your meetings so they're exactly 60 minutes? Now, look, if you have a 9 a.m. meeting and then you have a 10 a.m. meeting and then 11 and then a noon, that all works fine on paper. But human beings need to shift focus. They need a break. They need to kind of refresh themselves between things. And so on paper it works, and if those meetings run long, then people feel like they are in constant catch-up and stress mode all day. So what are you doing around your meetings? Can you change the default times? Like, for example, I use Calendly to set up meeting invites because, as do you, I know, because otherwise without an automatic scheduler, it's all very manual. However, I put in for 45-minute increments because I want to give myself that 15-minute buffer. I know we met at 15 past the hour because I wanted to give myself the buffer that I'm not going from my 1 o'clock right to my 2 o'clock. I want to meet at 2:15. So we have to start thinking strategically, because otherwise what ends up happening is that technology is running us and we're not running it. Another thing I often say is that technology is a great servant, but it makes for a very lousy master. So make sure that you are in control of your technology and your technology is not in control of you.
Yeah. I have a little bit of luxury of, benefit of that because we run a technology company. I got a, handle on that. And I learned very, very early on. My meetings, if it's not with the client or we're recording for 45 minutes, usually 15 minutes meeting. I learned very early on that I don't need more than 15 minutes to run any meeting. Anything I want to accomplish, I can accomplish in 15 minutes, and I can take a time. So shorting the cycle on our meetings, that's I think that's been helping me quite a bit. So I don't need to spend more time. Just if I need to build a rapport, then I'll set up a different time to build a rapport with somebody. But I don't need more than 15 minutes. Very interesting.
Good.
Is that one of the challenges for new generation coming into workplace as well? They grew up with the technology and they don't even know the separation of these two. Our generation, we still think that, hey, listen, we can build a little discipline and a structure, get a time back, and we can think about a lot of what are the thought process we need. They don't even need a separation between those two. For them, it's the same thing. What are your thoughts on that? These new people coming to workplace.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with just like we said earlier. I mean, the newer generations in the workforce are digital natives. They've grown up, touching screens since they can remember. And so one of the challenges they have is to recognize that the medium that they're most comfortable with, which oftentimes might be text or email or Slack or something like that, that sometimes, it actually makes more sense to pick up the phone and talk through things. And if you're not comfortable with that, you're more likely to go back and forth. It's like, why did you spend, all this time with 20 emails in this thread? Why don't you just pick up the phone or meet in person or something else? So you have to understand each medium is good for certain things, but it's not for everything. It's not for everything. And one of the things also realizing that, all the technology can be very good for disseminating information, but it isn't necessarily very good for disseminating inspiration or engagement or commitment. Let me give you an example. So let's say I'm the head of marketing and I have a marketing team and we have a new marketing initiative. Now I could let's say there's 20 people on my team. I could send out an email to all 20. And so here's the information and this is what you need to do. And I could write it really well, go. However, if I really wanted the commitment from each one of them, what if I set up a one-on-one meeting with each of them for 20 minutes? To engage with them one-on-one. Now you're saying, it's going to take me so much more time. Yes, it will. Now, maybe it's not 20 people, maybe it's 10, whatever. But if you just do the calculus of how much is the investment of your one-on-one time with that person going to shift the trajectory of what they do later. And I think what leaders need to do at all levels have to recognize, stop thinking of, oh my gosh, I have to spend this time with these people. I have to spend, it's not spending time, it is investing in this, your most critical resource, right? Because the hour that you spend with someone can change the trajectory of 40 hours of their week. Yeah. And so you need to manage your workload so you don't short shrift that. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this too, Gurmeet, is how many people have regularly scheduled one-on-one meetings with their managers and they're always being postponed or canceled because, we got this crisis, this client called in. You understand, don't you? Right? Yeah. And so they'll tell you that. And there's part of you that understands, but part of you is like, you know what? I don't trust you as much. I don't think you're really putting me number one. Yeah. And we all, and so what becomes the priority? And so that is a self-leadership issue for leaders. They have to realize what are the things that you're doing to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. In a book, you always you also talk about onboarding, employee experience as well on a workplace, right? That's a beginning block for anybody's coming to the company, right? That also tied with the same thing. What expectation you're setting up for the as soon as somebody joins your company as well. That goes back to the leadership as well, I guess, right? So you're setting up the environment as soon as somebody introduced you in an organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talk a lot in the book. We talk about this whole idea of it's up to the leader to design the employee's experience. And the employee's experience is basically all the different touch points that they have with you, with the organization, that creates their understanding of, we'll call it your organizational brand, right? And so we all have that as customers, right? Yeah. So there's certain brands that we're all super loyal to because everything, and it's not just the product or the service, it's everything around it, right? It's your logo. It has to do with how easy is it to navigate your website? How do we deal with stuff when there's a problem? I mean, every single thing either subtracts or adds to their perception of that experience. Mm-hmm. We kind of talk about it as I teach people about this idea of creating a stronger experience. Like if I say to everyone, one click, everyone knows that comes from Amazon, right? Amazon has made one click famous.
Yeah.
And the problem, of course, for everybody else is that now that becomes the benchmark for experience. So you may not be in the online retailing business whatsoever, but if someone can one click and order on Amazon and they have to go through your processes and 30 clicks,
yeah.
you are now being compared like, this was really simple. How come you can't autofill these things? And, so, I mean, one of the things I always am suggesting that leaders do in whatever capacity is how can you reduce the friction? I mean, Amazon, they're masters at this, like making it easy, frictionless. They make it frictionless for you to be able to buy quickly and easily. So look, one of the things we live in this age of complexity, and what people are craving is simplicity. Like, give me 2 minutes of my day back. Give me that much less stress. Give me that much more comfort that what you're doing makes my life easier. And I will pay you a premium to do that. And so I think as leaders, we have to just be smart about that, both with our external customers and certainly with our internal employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always focus on our customer's experience. We never focus on employee experience, but that's what's move your business forward. End of the day, right? So if your staff is having a better experience, they're definitely going to deliver that customer experience to your customers as well, right? So it translates that to the other side. Okay,
of course.
Interesting. So many changes, so many challenges for leaders. Where does their well-being of the health-wise or their physical, health or their mental well-being comes in? Before they can help their staff, they gotta be in a state where they can, if they don't help themselves, how they're gonna help their staff, right? So where does that fit in? That, hey, listen, this is something they have to take on. You cannot take that lightly anymore. That your well-being of physically and mentally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well-being is critical. One of my favorite quotes around leadership comes from Albert Schweitzer, and he said, "Example is not the main thing in influencing others; it is the only thing." So as the leader, you are a role model. So and think about the best leaders you've ever known, ever worked with. And I said, what are the characteristics that describe them? They're all going to be generally positive attributes. You're going to say things like they were focused, they were committed, they were engaged, they were enthusiastic, they were happy, they were joyful, they were listening, they were passionate, right? They were convicted, right? And the thing is, so if you want to model any and all of those attributes, what kind of practices that do you need to do? Because you can't just fake your way through that every day. You might be able to fake it for a minute or 2 or 5, but you can't be consistently that way. So you have to take care of yourself physically, right? So what are the things that you're doing? Are you getting enough sleep? What's your nutrition like? What kind of movement are you getting in your day so that your physical body is energized? Yeah. Then what are you doing mentally? So what are you doing to eliminate distractions? Like, for example, do you have all sorts of pings and dings and rings on your phone and your computer, like grabbing your attention? Like, I have 0 auto notifications on my phone, on my computer, because I want to be like right now, I don't want to be distracted. I want to be here with you right now. So what are you doing so that you can focus mentally on one thing and knowing it's the right thing to be focused on? What are you doing to energize yourself emotionally? Do you surround yourself with other people who are positive? Do you have a practice of gratitude? Do you celebrate wins and progress on a consistent basis? And then what are you doing around purpose, that you understand that what you do every day connects to this bigger sense of this is important? Because everyone wants to feel like what they're doing matters, right? That it isn't just a job, that I'm actually contributing to something bigger than myself. So we've got you can call that almost a spiritual component. So physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. As leaders, we have to model that and understand we design environments in which people can thrive or they can just barely be surviving. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through intention.
Yeah. Hard work. You got to keep working on yourself, right? So
absolutely.
So it's a lot of challenges to go through. I think that time coming towards us, for 2022 or even beyond that. Any word of wisdom for leaders? What they if they want to start working on some, they should have been working on this for a long time. But if they want to start, take a different perspective on leadership, but they want to start working on that, where can they start? How do they go about it?
Well, what I would say is start small. Start with small little habits. So people tend to New Year's resolutions are a classic example, right? People get very passionate and motivated for about 12 hours, and then the motivation fades. You can't depend on motivation to make behavior change. What you need to do is embed some very small little habits. And there's all sorts of research out there and great references. One of my favorite books out there is a book called Tiny Habits by Dr. B.J. Fogg, who really goes into the science of behavior change. And it really is about set the bar low. And the key is consistency, because humans tend to overestimate how much they can do in a day, but we tend to underestimate what we can get done over time with deliberate practice. So it isn't about, again, if you want to start working out, you're not going to go to the gym for 3 hours one day and never do it again.
Yeah.
The goal is find something consistent and then start to flex those muscles, strengthen these behaviors, build healthy habits for you, for your team over time. And I'd say a big piece to get started with that is do an inventory, right? Take stock of where you are, because you cannot change what you do not notice. So self-awareness is the first pivotal step to making this happen.
Yeah, once you're aware of it, then you can build a plan of what you want to do, and then you can go from there. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So where can people, so if you, before we go, if you can talk about your journey, Alain, how do you get involved in a leadership, and talk about, how did you, what made you write this book, and a little bit of a journey, how do you get to this point?
Yeah, well, gosh, that's a whole question. So for me, I have always been fascinated as to why people do what they do. I guess human motivation, and it was something I always was interested in as a kid. And then I also, on the one hand, I had that interest in motivation. On the other hand, my father's family were all professional musicians. And so the sense of performance, and I started playing the violin at age 5. I played in Carnegie Hall in New York with the Youth Symphony Orchestra of New York at the age of 13. Wow. In fact, on my 13th birthday, I performed in Carnegie Hall. And so the sense of performance, there's something about performance that is, you're on, right? This larger than life and this focused attention that you have. And so for me, I think my work has been about looking at how do you marry the science of high performance with the performing art of leadership, right? And so I didn't call it leadership back then. What I thought of it was, how do you impact and influence other people? Since then, I've come to understand that it's leadership. So I got involved. I started after I went to undergraduate, where I was like liberal arts and kind of dabbled in a lot of things. I got more interested in theater, and I actually have a master's in fine arts from a professional theater training program in acting conservatory, where I basically put myself under the microscope for 3 years as an actor, as a performer, where you are your own instrument, right? Your voice, your body, how you move. We learn things like accents, so you can speak in different accents from people all around. And you're realizing, for example, this is right. So if you think about, if someone has a British accent, right, you can actually break the accent down into its component parts of consonants and vowels. So I'll give you an example. So let's say a Canadian, like the classic Canadian sound is out, right? So if I said about, that sounds like it's pretty standard American English. But if I'm that kind of classic Canadian, it's about, ow, right? So I just changed the ow to ow. Same thing with like British English. They take the O, but it becomes O, right? So there's certain vowel sounds. So I can say, for example, instead of saying Paul, I would say Paul, right? So Paul is O, Paul is come. And suddenly I'm speaking with a British accent. And all I've done is change a few of the different consonants and vowel sounds. That's all it takes, right? So suddenly you realize what I share all this because every result that we see is a product of smaller component behaviors. And that's true with leadership. So in leadership, we've got connection, we've got communication, and we've got collaboration. And we can break each of those three down into smaller component things and practice getting better at them. So I guess for me, my journey has been one, and it's been in this field since 1997. So I wasn't born yesterday, and I've been doing this for a while. But so for me, it's really been around how can I help people to unlock all this potential that we have and understand how can I then put it out in the world to make better workplaces, better communities, better families, and ultimately a better world. So that's kind of a quick version of my bio in terms of where I've been and where I'm hoping to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm always asking that question to myself, like, hey, what's my potential?
Right.
Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm building company. I'm doing this, but maybe my potential is a little bit more than that. Maybe it's more than that. So you keep pushing the envelope a little further, and every time you discover more, there's more to it, than simply what you're currently working on.
Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting. I learned so much. I definitely recommend all the business leaders who are watching or listening to us definitely reach out to you, have a conversation with you, and where can people find you? How can they connect with you, Alain?
Yeah, absolutely. So easiest place to go find all my work is my website, which is my name, www, that's not my name,
Okay.
www.AlainHunkins, that's AlainHunkins.com. And while you're there, there's a page on resources. You can actually download the first chapter of my book, Cracking the Leadership Code. You can also order it from there. I have a newsletter once a month. You also might be interested. I run 3 times a year. I run a 30-day online leadership challenge. We've run 10 cohorts through so far. Over 500 people have gone through this. It's really been life transformative, both personally and professionally. So check that out. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's my social media of choice. And you can also contact me through the website as well.
Okay, I'm gonna definitely put all the links below this video as well. And how about your TEDx speaking? Is there a link on a YouTube as well, or is it on your website?
Yeah, you can go, if you go to the TED.com and put my name in, Alain Hunkins, there's only one TED Talk. So you'll see it's a TEDx talk. It's called The Basic Truth That Leaders Neglect, which, by the way, is connection and empathy. Nice. So that's what it is. Yeah.
And how about the 30-day challenge? Is there a link on a website as well?
Yeah, there's a link. If you go right to the AlainHunkins.com, you can find it there. Or if you want, you can go to 30dayleadershipchallenge.com. It'll take you to the same page.
I'll include those links as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, I appreciate your time, Alain. Thank you so much for your time. I learned so much, and I'm looking forward to our future discussions as well. And I'll include all the links. So thank you so much for your time again, Alain.
Oh, you're most welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Hi there. Thank you so much for investing time with us and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. For next episode, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and send your feedback. Until next time, have yourself a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.